Okay, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the December 2nd meeting of the Arroyo Grande Planning Commission. And, oh, I don't have my agenda in front of me. Let me pull that up. Oh, that's not it. Sorry. Oh, thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Chair Roof,
Here.
Vice Chair Martin,
Here.
Commissioner Buchanan is absent tonight, Commissioner Sackerson,
Here.
and Commissioner Worthen.
Here.
Thank you so much. We'll now do the flag salute, and I'm in the agenda to lead us, so I will do that. We all rise, please. Thank you, everybody. We'll now move to item number 4, an agenda review. Seeing as that we only have one item, I'm going to assume we don't have any changes. Seeing none, we'll move to item number 5. This is community comments and suggestions. This is a public comment period, and I'd like to invite members of the community to present issues, thoughts, or suggestions on matters that are not scheduled on tonight's agenda. Comments should be limited to items that are within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, and members of the public may provide comment in person or remotely by joining the Zoom and using the hand raise feature. Do I have any members of the public here tonight who would like to make a comment on an item that's not on the agenda? Seeing none in the room, do we have anybody online tonight?
We do not. At this time, nobody is on Zoom.
Thanks so much. So I will go ahead and close community comments and move to agenda item number 6, which is written communications. I did receive the written communications. Did all of my fellow commissioners receive those? Thank you. Are there any others that were not in the packet?
There are not.
Thank you. So then we will move to item number 7, the consent agenda. And the only item in consent agenda tonight is 7A, the approval of minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes or need anything edited or changed? Then I'll entertain a motion, if anyone would like to accept the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the Planning Commission of November 4th, 2025 as presented in the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Martin,
Yes.
Commissioner Worthen,
Yes.
Commissioner Sackerson,
I'll abstain.
Chair Roof.
Yes. Thank you. So that motion carries. And we will move on to item 8, public hearings. Seeing none, we'll move right along to item number 9, non-public hearing items. And 9A is the study session to consider the preliminary public draft general plan update. Do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Pedrati, I'm the Community Development Director for the City of AG. And tonight's very exciting. We're daylighting essentially the preliminary public draft of the general plan. And this is a study session tonight with the Planning Commission to look at that, get some public comment, answer questions, and all that good stuff. So we have Michael Gibbons here who's our consultant with Minter Harnish. We also have Hannah Woolsey, who's with Minter Harnish as well in the audience. Andrew Perez is our planning manager, and then Patrick Holub is our associate planner, all here tonight. So Michael will provide a presentation. We'll go into background, how we got here, what is in the draft, and where we go from here. So I'll turn it over to Michael.
Well, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. It is an absolute pleasure to be here to introduce and daylight, as Brian put it, your draft general plan. So we're right on track but this really is a culmination of a considerable effort to get to this point. So because this is the only agenda item, we decided to fill it up for you. So to break down this item, here's what my plan of attack. I'll start with just a general overview of what general plans are, really for the benefit of those listening. Then I'll break down this project specifically, some of the focus areas. I'll touch on some of the community engagement we've gotten into. Then I'll dive into the more substantive portion of this evening, which is actually reviewing the general plan elements themselves, and then ultimately hand it back to the commission to ask the consultant team and planning staff any questions, and then hear from members of the public on their initial reactions. Before we do that, just another brief round of introductions. Michael Gibbons. I'm a project manager for Mintier Harnish, the land use consulting firm that was selected to assist the city in this effort. And I'm also the overall project manager for the project on the consultant team. With me is Hannah Woolsey, is also on this project. Not with me this evening, though, is a larger group of folks that have helped support this effort, in addition to your team and your planning staff. So to get into it, I want to just provide an overview of what a general plan is, because it can be a new concept to some. And I like to view your general plan as your blueprint, or essentially your guiding document for future growth. So every city and county in California is required to have a general plan. It really ultimately represents the community's vision for future growth and development, and guides long-term decisions. It does that by establishing goals, policies, and programs on a variety of topics that ultimately you, the Planning Commission, City Council, and your planning staff will have to follow throughout the longevity of this plan. Now, the focus of this general plan update is pretty specific. There has not been a comprehensive update of your general plan in over 2 decades. So a lot has changed when it comes to best practice, state law, new policies that the city has adopted, and also the opportunity to collect community feedback. So in 2021 is when this project initially started, with the council directing this city to issue an RFP to start this process, and officially kicking off in 2023. We've been collecting community feedback through this process, and overall, here's generally what we've heard: is there's a focus on prioritizing active and safe transportation and infrastructure, increased opportunities for a broad spectrum of housing affordability, and also this desire to maintain the agrarian history and the small town character that is Arroyo Grande. Here's a visual of how we got here. If we look at this phase schedule, we're really at phase 6. To get to this point, we've done a lot. We've produced an existing conditions and background report. We've facilitated multiple community engagements and pop-up events, study sessions with the City Council, the Planning Commission. We've engaged the public throughout this process. We have a technical advisory group that consists of city staff and division members. We also have a citizens advisory group as well, made up of citizens to also vet and view our documents. But this, given the complexity, this is a multi-year, multi-phase project. The council at the outset really set a target and goal for us to have a draft of this general plan out by December 2025. So as a project manager, I love that we are in December 2025, and 2 weeks ago, we released the public review draft of this document, which is extremely exciting. Now, as mentioned, this is a multifaceted, multi-year project. In addition to your general plan, the council also had some additional items that they wanted our team to assess during this process. So one is, after this general plan is completed, we're following up this with a comprehensive development code update. So all of your zoning regulations and then your subdivision regulations we're going to be updating to really implement a lot of the great ideas and policies we have as part of your general plan. We're currently updating the city's climate action plan and adaptation plan as well. And there were a series of economic development tasks that were conducted a couple of months ago that have been folded into this process as well, where we reached out to small businesses and conducted an economic development trends report. Community outreach has been essential through this project and was really a called for and deserved for this community. In order to achieve this, we've implemented a really robust community engagement strategy. It really starts off with a website. It ends up being the hub for this project, where we announce upcoming tasks. It ends up being and deliverables. Ends up being a library for this document as well. You can review every meeting, workshop materials, and upcoming engagement opportunities. We also have branding and logos for the outreach program as well, a series of social media blasts, and emails that have been sent out. We have an ongoing list of those interested can stay up to date. We've also facilitated a series of surveys. Fortunately for this project, and something that I don't see in a lot of other communities, is you have invested the money to send physical surveys twice to every address in the city throughout this project. That does not happen frequently in these general plan updates, but it has been, that has really been a strong desire to cast as wide of a net as possible and to let as many people know. And it's really yielded some wonderful results. We've had some extremely wonderful engagement throughout this entire process that has really shaped the draft that you have before you tonight. And then we've also had formal workshops and events, many of which the Planning Commission you have attended, and I see some familiar faces in the crowd as well who have attended our prior workshops. So thank you for being here. So let's start to dive into a little bit more before we get into the substantive portion of this presentation. What we've been up to on our team is we haven't been before the Planning Commission since March. There's been a lot that's been going on since then. We've been taking community feedback and actually drafting your general plan. And we've produced a series of documents that really tee up the document that we have before you this evening. First, we have an existing conditions and trends workbook that's online that was produced at the outset of this project. That takes a snapshot of what Arroyo Grande was back in 2024, and then this plan really builds on top of that. We also have various community engagement strategy reports where we've documented a lot of the findings, a lot of the feedback, community input. We have a land use scenario memo that was put out that analyzed different land use strategies, and that inevitably Planning Commission recommended a land use map to the City Council. And then what is to come after tonight and after we move on to this next phase of the project is an environmental impact report, which I'll touch on here. This is, to some planners, the bane of planning, but for those familiar with California planning, California is unique in some aspect that it has its own set of environmental laws. It's called the Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA for short. This is really a law about disclosure that the state requires that jurisdictions, or when there is a development proposed, that jurisdictions have to disclose and analyze any potential environmental impacts that may come from a land use decision or development. So in compliance with the state, this project kind of qualifies as needing some analysis. So in order to do that, we are preparing what's called an environmental impact report. That process will take about 8 to 10 months to prepare, but we will analyze the draft document that we have before you, the land use potentials, the pros and cons, and really look at some potential alternatives given some potential mitigation that might need to take place on some of the policies for your consideration. Now, before we get into the actual elements themselves, I want to talk about one of the guiding sets of documents that we've been following through this process, and that is your vision and your guiding principles. So at the outset of this project, we have a phase where we met with the community. Through a series of engagement events, we met with the City Council and the Planning Commission, and we drafted a new vision statement for your general plan for the community. And why is that important? Well, it helps capture where the community wants to go in this plan, its priorities, its goals, and its policies. And the vision statement really sets forth the ideal aspiration, something that the community wants to achieve in this general plan itself. And through a series of community engagement, based on a recommendation to the Planning Commission, the City Council ultimately selected this vision statement, and I'll read it here. Arroyo Grande is a welcoming and vibrant community that cherishes its historic charm, agrarian character, and diversity. We promote a healthy lifestyle through walkable and bike-friendly spaces, ensure inclusive recreational facilities for all, and foster strategic growth to meet the varied needs of our citizens and visitors. Now, to help support this vision, the council also selected guiding principles. I like to think of these as the pillars that support this vision statement. And this was also crafted out of community engagement, public involvement, wordsmithing, and study sessions with the Planning Commission and City Council as well. And in total, there are 5 guiding principles that we used as a touch point and as our guide working with your city staff to craft the goals, policies, and programs that we have for your consideration. So in total, there are 5 guiding principles: preservation of community, and in no particular order of importance, preservation of community pride and identity, recreation and community spaces, infrastructure and smart growth, economic development and local businesses, and environmental sustainability. So with that, I think that provides at least a foundation of the general plan. The reason why I want to focus on start off with the vision and guiding principles is because, again, that is the lens that we have been viewing when we were crafting the goals, policies, and programs that we have before you. In totality, your general plan as it exists today is 339 pages. I do not plan on going through each 339 of those pages this evening. What I want to provide you, though, is an overview of what you can expect when you go through these elements and you start reading the content there within. So I want to just talk about the structure, a little bit about the content, and then some of the major policy changes within each of these elements themselves. So in total, your plan is comprised of 10 chapters, 9 of which are actual elements of the general plan. Chapter 1 is just the introduction. It tees up the community engagement, summarizes a lot of the feedback, has an acknowledgements page, also has the comprehensive list of figures and tables, really tees up the plan itself. Now, as I go through these plans, and as you'll see, there are within each element, there is a common structure that you'll find. Each element starts off with a brief context and some introduction that tees up these goals, policies, and programs in the element itself. Now, every element has these goals, policies, and programs, and I think it's important to just clarify what these are, because ultimately this is what the city is committing to over the lifespan of this plan. So when we see a goal, think of a goal as a statement that just describes, in general terms, a desired future condition or end state of the community. And there are a multitude of goals throughout each of these elements. The goals describe the ideal future conditions for a topic and tend to be very general and broad in nature. Policies, on the other hand, go to implement your goals. So policies are a little clearer, unambiguous, and they're statements that help guide and how to achieve the actual goal for decision makers to follow. Now, there are now programs, and how do you measure that? So we have these great ideas, these goals and policies, but how does the city actually measure those over the lifespan of this plan? That's done through implementation programs. Think of these as measures or action items. I also like to think of these as promises. So within each of these elements, there are essentially goals, policies, and promises that the community, the city, is committing to over the next 20 to 25 years or annually, which is why it's really important that we're reviewing these and getting the community's temperature on these priorities. Visually, this is what these look like. So we have these goals that are within each element. Those are broad, then further supported by policies. One thing that I want to point out here that we have left in really for transparency are source tags. So it's Arroyo Grande is what it is today because of the general plan that it has now. So through a comprehensive general plan update, throw out all of your goals and policies and start over doesn't make much sense. There's a lot of great content and a lot of good goals and policies that have served the community well. So in a lot of instances, what we've done is we've just simply modified a lot of the goals and policies that exist today. We've updated with consistent language or modified it to better align with the vision statement or the guiding principles. So in some cases, you'll see, as is on the screen, this example where we have an existing policy that we're simply modifying, just the language. In other cases, you'll see new policy or new goal, and that's when the city staff and the consultant team have collectively identified a topic that needs to be addressed or augmented that isn't currently addressed in the policy or goal form. And from the program perspective, this is what these look like in the element themselves. So again, think of these as promises. Along with these action items, we have the policies that each of these programs implement, the responsible division or department who will be overseeing this particular program. And then to help set priorities for the community, we've established timeframes. So the lifespan of this project is typical of these plans is typically 20 to 25 years. And so we've incrementally built out some timing in there. This again helps prioritize. And then we also have source tags here as well, again, to show and highlight that there are a lot of great existing programs that have been successful for the community, and in some cases we are just merely augmenting or adding some additional ones. So with that, let's dive into the first element, probably the most referenced element in the general plan, and that is your land use and community character element. I like to think of this element as really the guide that shapes the urban fabric or the physical environment of your community. So overall, the staff report does a wonderful job of summarizing a lot of the changes. What I plan to do is just highlight some of these major, some of the more substantive changes that we've made to highlight each of these elements. Some of the larger items to point out is that we have refined and we have reapplied your specific plan designation to more properties per the council's direction. We've also updated your general plan land use diagram to incorporate a focus on more mixed use zones or more mixed use designations, sorry. Specifically, we've incorporated a new designation for East Grand Corridor. We've also increased allowable densities and intensities for development. Strategically, in some of the residential zones and some of your commercial zones, we've allowed and pushed for higher or have allowed for a higher threshold of development. We've also looked at incorporating, where possible, your housing element. That's a separate standalone element, still part of your general plan, but it's updated on a separate cycle. And so where possible, we tried to tie that into the land use changes for consistency. And then we also looked at setting goals and priorities that would encourage infill development. As it was noted through community engagement, there are a variety of development opportunities, vacant and underutilized sites throughout the city, that if the development standards were there to facilitate development, they could be achieved. So we tried to analyze that and create some better standards to hopefully achieve that. Here is the land use diagram that the City Council ultimately moved forward with and is what we have proposed in this draft general plan. Now, I will mention that this is a draft until the day is adopted. So this is merely our first take based on community input and at least council's initial direction on a land use diagram for the community, but still can be refined. And that's why we have these public meetings. That's why we released this document 2 weeks in advance of this meeting, and we'll have it open for public comment for an additional 45 days after this. But in here, we can see some of the larger changes where we've applied more specific plan or designated more areas as specific plan, have created a new mixed-use corridor along East Grand, and then have also, as I'll highlight a little later, have also introduced another new designation, which is a standalone designation for your parks and recreational facilities. So I had mentioned that we had augmented and added some additional policies. And so through our community engagement, through this process, there were some emerging policies, emerging areas that we focused on. And so as you go through the draft, you'll see that there are some larger topics that are new. So I want to just briefly call those out. So there are a variety of policies that focus on safety through design. So that's really going to tie back to changes in your development code and your zoning. There's a call for better transitions and encouraging better transitions in density and intensity between varying land uses. There's also the call for the preservation of the village and the allowability of its flexibility that it has today. And also creating diverse housing opportunities, not only for the high-end buyers and not only for the low-income qualifying, but also for just the attainable housing, even market rate housing, really creating as wide of a breadth of opportunity as possible within the city. So we reflected and built those in from a policy level in this element. Moving on to the natural cultural resources element, this really focuses on preserving, enhancing, and protecting a lot of the natural, cultural, and physical resources in the community. Also touches on open space and air quality. So these are some items that the state requires jurisdictions address. So we've touched on those per state law in this element as well. overview is there is an emphasis on public art and cultural resources. We've modified the existing agricultural preservation policies. The last general plan was very heavy on agriculture, and we've since kind of modified, wordsmith, and to better reflect the current state of agriculture in the community, which is slowly decreasing. We've also mapped biological habitat and endangered species resources, and then also mapped air quality indicators and emission sources. Fortunately, being on the coast, air quality isn't too much of a factor, but still in compliance with state law. We analyzed that and included that in your plan. Here's just an example of some of the maps that we've updated. All of your maps in your general plan have also been comprehensively updated along with the data within them. So we're going to provide you with a clean slate of working data that really tee you up for success after this project. Some of the emerging policy areas as we were drafting included integration of a recommendation on the integration of a new public art program, the requirement of better collaboration with local tribes when applicable. We've incorporated some new policies on sensitive receptor setbacks, and also looked at applying policies specific to creek trails and multi-use trails, which is a really important aspect through community engagement. The next element that probably received the most substantial amount of updates is your safety element, and that's because this is one of those topics that the state really has a heavy hand in crafting. So this is also an extremely relevant element given the development is happening, and we continue to encroach into urban land, which imposes risks, fire hazard risks, flooding, dam inundation. So this element really tries to call those out, address those at a policy level, and map those for community. Overall, we integrated your multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, We also updated for various consistency with climate change law, specifically SB 379. We also reflected the new wildfire severity zone maps and floodplain maps that have come out, and then identified climate-related hazards and their potential impact on the city. One of the more, say, substantial portions of this element also included an emergency evacuation modeling analysis, which is available as an appendix to this general plan. What we did is we analyzed 3 scenarios and the emergency evacuations within them, selected at consultation with city staff. Really, that was to look at infrastructure for roadways and see what the capacity is under certain circumstances in emergency scenarios. And here's just an example of some of the maps that you can find within this element. Some of the emerging trends and new policy areas that you'll see in this draft include addressing single access points that would be into neighborhoods for safety concerns and evacuation. Also new standards for electrical undergrounding for consideration, a better emphasis on access to public information for safety hazards, and also new policies to address unreinforced masonry buildings. Next topic is the noise element. This is, again, another state-required element that needs to be addressed. We did a couple of interesting things for this update. Not a lot changed substantially within this element, but because there were some anticipated land use changes to the land use map that council moved forward with, we needed to analyze those from a noise analysis perspective. So what we did is, working with our sub-consultant team, we actually went out and we evaluated and monitored new sites within the city, so we got more accurate readings of sound levels and decibel levels that exist in the city now. And then we modeled that versus what could we reasonably expect from the new land use map that the city council moved forward with. So we can compare what are the impacts to the development that we're moving forward with or proposing within the plan. And here are those maps. So this would be the future contours map. not a lot changed. The largest noise producer within the city is really the freeway. The I would say the most substantial change, and very limited at that, is we saw a change in the noise level along East Grand, but that made sense because there was an emphasis on creating further development and increasing development along East Grand, the East Grand corridor. So it made sense that noise levels were going to increase potentially as part of this update. So to address that, a new series of policies and a modification of your existing policies was done to ensure that noise levels were set. Those will eventually have to be incorporated into your municipal code through your noise ordinance and through various standards, but this is where we can at least set those initial levels that your future plans will work from and implement. Moving right along, we have your Parks, Recreation, and Community Service element. This is a single element that not only talks about the community services that are available, not only has an inventory of all your parkland and recreational spaces, but also addresses infrastructure and community service needs moving forward over the next 20 to 25 years. So in here, what we did is we have identified different park types. So we have 3 different park types in the community that we've identified that weren't previously identified. So we actually have terms for these that now the community is going to move forward with. Those include community parks, neighborhood parks, and pocket parks. They all each have their own designation. And we also created a new park designation on your land use map. If you remember the land use map that I had showed, previously the Parks and Recreation were just folded into your public services designation. So there wasn't actually an opportunity to designate specific parcels as recreational sites. Now the city has the ability to do that, and I think that is really going to set you up for success for future planning and really dedicate spaces purely for recreation as opposed to potentially turning into more of a public service use. We then also inventoried all local community services for fire, police, schools, and community services in this element as well. Some of the emergency policy areas that we've incorporated include fire safety information, park maintenance financing, infrastructure financing policies, policies that will look at wastewater system capacity as it relates to community services and infrastructure, and then emerging recreation opportunities. Pickleball was a big one that came up in our surveys. So I remember someone saying if pickleball doesn't show up in the general plan, it wasn't a successful general plan. So we have included the term pickleball in this policy. We've addressed it as an emerging recreational opportunity. But really, this is just a call for the city to stay abreast as to what are emerging opportunities that they can build in and reasonably fit into existing infrastructure and services. Next element I want to talk about is your circulation element. This is another really important element for consideration, as all of them are. But this one, I think, really has the most impact. I think physical impact to the everyday resident, because this is really infrastructure-based. And the capacity of your roadways and your bike network and your trail network. So within your circulation element, it establishes your existing roadway capacity and future investments. It also implements policies on who's going to pay and finance for those infrastructure improvements. And overall, through our update of this, fortunately, not a lot needed to be changed. The city went through a comprehensive update, I think it was back in 2021, of your circulation element. We actually worked with that firm again to refresh this, kind of repaint it, rebrand it. But what we've done really is just made some minor modifications to make sure that the land use element and the land use changes that the council moved forward with are now addressed from a circulation perspective. And here is the circulation map for consideration. In here, you'll see not only existing classifications, but proposed classifications that were, and proposed roadways that were also modeled as part of this process and as part of our analyses. And here are just some of the emerging policy trends that we worked with and we addressed and modified as we went through and, the various goals, policies, and programs. Again, though, not a lot changed from what was existing, just given the substantial update that the city went through in 2021. Swear, I just have two more. Economic development was a real focus that the City Council wanted us to take a look at as an opportunity in this process. And so what we've done is we've crafted specific goals, policies for economic development and have housed that in its own standalone document. Really, the idea here is we want to increase the economic base. We want to increase flexibility. We want to have fiscal stability and job creation. Is the real goal, really the vision, and further supported by the guiding principles that were selected for the project. In the economic development element itself, what we've done is we've folded in, as I had mentioned, there were some additional tasks that the council asked our team to work on, a market trends analysis. So we took that analysis, which is a separate task, folded a lot of the findings into this element. Within here, you'll find that there is an emphasis on short-term and long-term potential growth for commercial and retail development. That was something that the trend report actually came back with as a finding. So there is an opportunity that further justifies our increased density and intensity for some of your commercial areas. And there was also a recognition of food services and drinking growth shows a large increase within the next 6 years. So another opportunity for you to capitalize on a new and emerging market trend, something that this general plan, at least from a policy level, has started to address, hopefully. Policy topics that you'll find within this element include tourism, buying local, market promotion and coordination, ongoing fiscal health, and then also spaces for small businesses and accommodating workforce and more head of household jobs, finding the industries that can actually support those types of incomes. And then lastly is we have your health and equity element. The health and equity element really is a cross-cutting element. As a lot of the content contained within this, you could really say applies to other elements of this project. But the goal of this element as a standalone is to address health and environmental justice concerns or potential concerns within the community. Overall, the desire is to have a healthier, active community free from pesticide use, and that one is that is engaged in the civic decision-making process, which are all really pushed for and encouraged through this element. Some of the larger changes that underwent this particular document, as I should say, this is the newest or the new addition to the existing general plan, and really spurred out of a requirement by the state. So the state requires through a Senate bill called SB 1000 requires that jurisdictions do two things. An acknowledgement of an unfortunate what we find based on research is that there are portions of our communities that oftentimes bear, I should say, a disproportionate amount of environmental and pollution burdens. And unfortunately, what research shows is that a lot of those areas also tend to be lower income and minority-based populations. So in recognition of that, the state passed what is called SB 1000, and it requires jurisdictions to do two things. It requires jurisdictions to analyze if there are any of these communities, what they call disadvantaged communities, within the city limits. And then second, it requires that the city adopt goals, policies, and programs to mitigate any additional inconsistencies or environmental issues with those communities. So in compliance with state law, we did that analysis. There are no disadvantaged communities according to the state level within the city limits. So we have fulfilled that checkbox, if you will, from number one. Number two, though, is we still wanted to, as best practice, implement good goals, policies, and programs that forward health, equity, civic engagement. And so what we did is we ended up expanding this element to also include more of a broader view. So in here, you'll find goals and policies that address civic engagement, safe and sanitary housing, opportunities for physical activity, healthy food access, and pollution exposure, really trying to cast as wide of a net as possible in these topics. Here is a map, just to, you can trust, but you can also verify, of some of the scores within Rio Grande, specifically when it comes to Cal and Virus Screen, which is a tool that we use to analyze and identify disadvantaged communities, really disadvantaged census tracts that meet the meet the qualifications to be considered disadvantaged community. So as we see, it's on a percentile scale. Red would be bad, meaning that there would be a lot of pollution burden, a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to investment of infrastructure. Green, ideally, is in good standing. Pollution burden is low, pesticide use is low, civic engagement is high, incomes are relative for the area. So here's just a kind of a map, or at least a glimpse into some of the analyses that we've prepared. And some of the emergency policy areas within this element include healthy food options, better inclusive community outreach, better connection to youth services and senior services, and then incorporating a health in all policies mindset when you come to decision making and future policy adoption. So that was a lot, but there's even more to come. So this is just a draft. I like to say that because as you go back to school, you always know that you have multiple drafts. Nothing's perfect right away. We fully intend that there are going to be changes in the draft that we have before you tonight. So we have built in such a long review period, and why we really want to get public feedback in this process. So we anticipate that things are going to change, but this is also an opportunity for us to hear the Planning Commission's, your initial feedback and reaction. Next steps that I want to talk about is tomorrow night, we actually have our community workshop, where we are daylighting this to the community in an open house format. So within that, we'll be in the council chambers. We'll have boards, overview boards of each of these elements. We'll have city staff and members of the consultant team there as well to answer any questions. We'll have copies of each of the elements, and then overview, as I said, overview posters for each of them as well. It's also going to be an opportunity for you to provide written comment to us and ask us any clarifying questions. Fast forward to February of 2026, we're meeting with City Council. Going to be a very similar presentation tonight, but what I'm going to take to them is I'm going to take all of the feedback that the Planning Commission provides me, pair that with all of the feedback that the community is going to provide us tomorrow night and that we'll receive over the next 45 to 60 days. We're going to present that to the City Council for their consideration, get their initial reaction to the draft before you. Moving on after that is then when we can actually initiate the environmental impact report that I had mentioned and described earlier on. City Council essentially needs to give us the thumbs up that the decisions and that we've made in the draft thus far is okay for us to analyze from an environmental impact standpoint. So that process, again, is going to take about 8 to 10 months after we get through February. But in line with the council's desire, we have a public review draft by December 2025 now. So very exciting. I think what that gap highlights between December and February is a ton of opportunity for the public to engage in this process. We will have multiple opportunities on our website to submit comments, as is identified on the project website. And having these study sessions is also an opportunity for the community to engage with the appointed body on what they would like to provide to the council as a recommendation. So with that, that will conclude my formal presentations. I will hand it back to the chair to ask myself or city staff any clarifying questions.
My fellow commissioners, if you have questions that you'd like clarification on.
I'd like to make a comment before, posing questions. I'm going to be really curious to see what the people in the public have to say, both tonight at our meeting and even tomorrow and subsequent to this in this 45-day period of ongoing inquiry and adjustment. But I wanted to start by saying This is a huge project. This is something that goes way beyond what our city staff is really capable of doing. And this is not trying to insult anybody on the city staff, but just given the scope of their responsibilities and what they're able to do and the time they have in order to put a project like this together, a product like this together. From my experience, you know, Rio Grande has got a population about 18,000 people. We're one of the small cities in the state, and there's several hundred cities, you know, in the state of various sizes. Every single city is required to complete this document. I think we're very, very fortunate that we have a city council that is motivated to put out a very high-quality product, and we've been, I think, certainly blessed with being able to find a contracted organization that can come in and put together a product like this that's thorough, fairly comprehensive, but I think really provides a really great picture and a guide for us as we continue for the next 20 years. The last time we did it was like 2001 or 2002, so it has been more than 20 years. This is not a cheap project and a cheap investment, you know, for the city to be involved in, but it is one that does not occur very often, and I think this has been money very, very well spent. And I just want to say thank you publicly to the contractors that have been doing this work and the work the city staff has put together. This is a very high-quality document, and it's one I think the entire community can be very, very proud of. So thank you, everyone involved.
So well said, Commissioner. Thank you. Any questions from my other fellow commissioners?
Rather hear from the public while they're here.
Okay. Commissioner Worthen? Okay. So at this time, I'd like to open public comment for members of the public tonight to come up and give your input. When you come up, please introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak. The green, yellow, and red light will kind of guide you through that. And we aren't usually able to answer questions. We're here to hear your comment. And as our contractor mentioned, we will have the workshop tomorrow where there'll be more interaction and opportunity for you to speak back and forth with staff at 6. So this time, is there any members of the public who'd like to give comment on the proposal? Okay, I'm not seeing any right now, so hang on and we'll see if there's anybody online. Is there anyone online?
If anybody on Zoom would like to comment regarding this item, please raise your hand now or dial *9 if you're calling in. We have no raised hands, Chair.
Okay, so seeing none, this is your opportunity. I know we have the workshop tomorrow, but we would really love to hear from you if you have any comments. If no one wants to come forward and give comment at this time, then I'll close public comment and we'll come back to the board for discussion. Oh, please, come on up. Thank you, sir.
So my name's Fred Lewis. Live on Haven Court. Actually, yeah, I mean, looks like a good plan. I mean, I guess we won't know exactly until it gets implemented and, you know, what kind of guardrails are on there. One of the things I did want to say, though, is that in the last few months, I've been bugging Andrew. And I just want to say that he's just so approachable. He's answered all my questions. I've emailed him, I've called him, I've met him. And I can tell that as a member of the staff, he's very concerned with, you know, the citizens of the community. So I just wanted to say thank you to him. If we can continue on with openness and, you know, if we run into issues that we need to address, just it's nice to know that people are listening and, you know, so anyhow, like I said, we'll know when the plan gets implemented. And at this point, it looked good. So thank you.
Thanks for your comment. We appreciate it. We are very lucky to have really wonderful city staff that really do care about all the citizens that live here. So I echo your comments for sure. Any other members of the public this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for discussion. Sorry, Commissioner Sackerson. You're really wanting to hear from folks. Okay, so I'll open up discussion amongst my fellow commissioners for feedback for staff. And do you want to go first, Commissioner Sackerson?
I can.
You don't have to.
It's okay. Thank you, Michael, for your presentation. That was very thorough and for a very lengthy thing, you made it very digestible, which I appreciate, and I'm sure the citizens appreciate it too. It's a lot to address all of it at once. So what I was hoping to see, and I think for the most part I saw it, was there consistency from what we saw and discussed at workshops, study sessions previously, feedback through the surveys. Did that translate to the elements as drafted here? And from what I can tell, I think so. I think it's shaped up to be a pretty clear reflection of what people have asked for. I think I speak for myself, and I think maybe for some of the general public too, there's some, not necessarily confusion, but clarity that might be helpful in separating out what this guiding principle document really covers versus what needs to be in the municipal code in order to enforce the things that are in this document. And I think that's where it kind of gets blurred. I know we got some community feedback in the supplemental memos that we got earlier today that addressed things like egress from specific neighborhoods. You know, is that going to be addressed? Telecommunications, that's a critical component for our city. Like, I want to make sure that these things are heard and kind of addressed. Someone was talking about circulation, congestion at Fair Oaks and Halcyon intersection. How do those concerns play into what we see in front of us? How do we address those specific concerns? That's more what I would like to kind of get more on, if you can.
Yeah, I'll take the first stab at that. So it's something that we've tried to address, in the staff report, but I think we can probably do a better job of that. But generally, the policies drive what amendments we're going to make to the development code after this plan's adopted. So as we draft the policies and as the public and the commission and council review them, we want to ensure that if there are any development code standards that we have in mind that we want to see down the line, make sure we don't have any policies or implementation programs that are contrary to those. So when looking through that lens, it could be helpful to evaluate whether these policies are appropriate, whether the timing of the implementation programs is appropriate. So something to consider for all of us as we continue to review the document.
Thank you. I know it was a really kind of convoluted questioning that I gave you, but I just wanted to kind of put it out there that when people take the time to send in emails or write letters or make phone calls, that these things are read, and by all of us and certainly by staff, and they are addressed even if they don't sound like they are. So I was hoping that maybe some of those people were here to kind of dive into that, but I think general overview, that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Worthen, did you want to go next? Or I can go next, however you want to go.
Yeah, I'm curious kind of what level of detail we're gonna dive into. It's a big document, so I don't know if is it worthwhile for each of us to just kind of, I've got a list of, I guess, more comments, just kind of as if observations as I went through the policies. Is it helpful to go through chapter by chapter and we each comment? Is it helpful for me to go through and then do them one-off? I don't know what the most effective way to go through this massive
are you
document is.
thinking maybe take each element, and then if anyone has anything on that element, we could take it in order that way?
I'm open. I don't want to grab the mic and start going
No,
through my notes.
grab the mic.
And you guys have to sit there and listen to me drone on.
No.
So,
Go for it.
um,
And then if, when you're ready to move, if everybody's okay, we'll do your first element, and then if anyone else has anything there, we'll jump in, and then we can do it element by element. I think that makes the most sense.
yeah.
Okay,
I
go
think
ahead.
it works. Yeah. So with the land use, well, first of all, thank you guys for the work. Michael, you and your team did a phenomenal job. It's a very comprehensive document, but it's kind of with some help, we kind of learned how to read it. And once you learn how to read it, actually, it's pretty easy to move through, and a lot of it's a very good job of I think communicating, I was at a number of the community workshops. I've obviously been up here through a number of the meetings. I think on the whole, it does a really good job of communicating. Obviously, with a city of 18,000 people, you're probably gonna have about 20,000 opinions on what this should be and what it should look like. And I think you guys, by and large, did a wonderful job encapsulating those. Land use specifically, a couple of the areas that I more so just will I guess make a comment for as you guys kind of sift through things. One of the ones I have is, it relates mostly to land use goals. Like, I didn't know if it was like 1, 3, or 4, but it regards mainly the mixed use corridor, or the corridor mixed use. And it's as we get into, you know, kind of your floor area ratios and your parking requirements, your units per acre, and your height requirements. Looking at, that's a small enough corridor, and I think the pieces are diced up pretty small. There aren't, you know, kind of massive lots. And I know when I was on the community advisory council, one of the members is a planner, and you sort of look at the unintended consequence of, you know, if you have these floor area ratios and parking ratios on smaller lots, and now every lot has to have their own ingress and egress, all of a sudden what feels like fairly dense allowability kind of with the size of those lots down the corridor. I know there was concern of, are we going to maybe unintentionally kind of shrink what's actually doable because they just kind of don't all mesh with the size of lots there. Again, I don't know if this gets into kind of the high level stuff here, or if that goes further down into the code. But I think maybe some clarity around kind of how we're making sure we don't unintentionally kind of pigeonhole ourselves in what is an area that we've kind of designated to be more of a dense development. I know that was something that was communicated to me in both my observations and in the community development, the community advisory council, excuse me. And then the last one I had was with regard to land use 8, and it's 8.3 and 8.4. It's kind of the ag land subdivisions and the Williamson Act participation. I know there was voiced concern of maintaining kind of the ag cultural heritage and kind of the ag lands in our town. But I also know at one of the meetings we had farmers come and say it's no longer profitable to farm, or it's becoming more and more difficult to farm. And the language there is just pretty, I feel like it's pretty strong towards maybe making it more difficult for landowners to be able to do what they want or what they need to with their land, should ag not be an option anymore. And so obviously if they want to continue farming, they're more than able to continue farming. But if for some reason that's not viable for them or their families, it's seemingly to me overly maybe pigeonholing what they have to do with, you know, pushing it towards the Williamson Act. That's pretty hard to change on a property. And I know in one side of the coin, you're gonna like that because it preserves it and it makes it, you know, open space for a long time, but it also makes it really hard for anyone who owns that property to do much else with it. So in my opinion, it's a little bit maybe overburdensome in those two dots, but.
Can I jump in on that
Yeah,
one?
and that's actually all my comments on land use.
Oh,
so,
okay,
yeah.
so just piggybacking off that, I had kind of a similar take when I talked with staff about it, because on one hand, we have these focus areas, and the response I got, and tell me if I've got this right, Andrew, is the designation for those specific plans is not agricultural. So we're talking about other lands. Is that what you're getting that?
No, I know that
Oh,
like the North Fair Oaks is
Right.
currently ag. It will be a specific plan, but I mean in the new one, more out kind of
Out.
I guess
Out
east of
east.
town. It just, as it calls out in 8.3 and 8.4, it's saying encourage them to be put into Williamson Act or discourage subdivision of parcels.
Gotcha. Okay.
And in my opinion, it just becomes, personally, I don't feel like if people own that land and that's what they want to do, I just want to make sure that they have a path to do that. You know, I think we can encourage it. I think we can, to some level, I think we as a city can desire the open lands and the ag lands, but I do worry. I was using the North Fair Oaks as an example. The owners of North Fair Oaks came and said,
I was here
yeah,
when they were here.
you know, and so
yeah.
they came in and explicitly said, like, yes, it would be nice to maintain that, but it also isn't as profitable as it used to be. It's not, think his direct words were, I will be the last generation of my family to farm this land.
Right.
And if that's the case out east of town, I would hate to pigeonhole in what that land could be used for,
Gotcha.
should a family decide, we can't farm this anymore. But now they also can't sell it off or divide it or do different things. So I think there's ways we could maybe control what happens out there or encourage stuff to happen out there in a less restrictive way. So that's just,
I appreciate your call for the flexibility for,
yeah, I
Okay.
would just hate to make it too rigid in a doc like this there's just a lot of things can happen in 30 years. And for this document to kind of say that's the only options for east of town would be overly restrictive, in my opinion. It's one opinion, so it doesn't have to be the case, but.
gotcha, thank you. Did,
So people can see.
oh yeah, is that,
Is it possible to put that page up so people can see the language we're talking about?
I'm
Just
looking,
might
at-
be
I'm
easier
looking
to
at page
fo-
64, what has LU.
Yes,
A-
63 to
A4
64.
A4 and A5 on.
It's just easier to maybe follow along the conversation, because, I mean, I'm having to look at it.
Just give us 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry.
But as they're staging that up, I'm going to concur with that. To me, it's an issue of, I guess, being just flexible or open enough and recognizing that there's some alternative uses that are non-agricultural, and recognizing that some of these locations are existing laws within the county, or they may be piggybacked off of state law that requires, any currently zoned or actively utilized agricultural property, if there is a desire and intent of the property owners to change, that zoning, then they already are required to go through the county agricultural commissioner. So I don't want to be proposing that we bypass something that is, under ordinance, and maybe this wording is in here. It's just an acknowledgement there are existing, rules and regulations that anybody wanting to change, any kind of subdivision, zoning or usage, there's already a process involved that requires them to go through the commissioner. Am I missing something? Did I get that right, or?
Yeah, you got it right. And a lot of it is just, being good neighbors and working in partnership with the county. So there's often plan referrals between the cities, with Pismo Beach and Grover Beach, and then the county, depending on what the projects are.
Are we able to get that page up? I know that you're working on it. There we go. There in the public, you want to look at page 64 there. LU is land use.
So we were referring to the very top one.
Yeah, 8.4.
And Chair, if I may.
Oh, sorry, I was, oh,
For
go ahead,
just a
go
point-
ahead.
Just a point of clarification. I think this just further underscores prior vision in the general plan. Because if we look at the source tag for these, that ends up being existing policy and existing direction that's just been slightly modified and tweaked, and we've just kind of condensed some existing ones. But I think just further illustrates the importance of the vision that was, and maybe some of the adaptation or the refinement that we can do now just based on existing circumstances. Ownership of land, desires of development. So this ends up kind of being one of those holdovers potentially where we could certainly soften up the language on the back end.
I think I would agree with Commissioner Worthen.
I
Like,
agree.
having more flexibility is a good idea. Does that
Yeah,
make
I
any
don't, I don't think it's bad to have the language mostly as written. I mean, I think when you use verbiage like discourage, encourage, you are stating that the city has a preference to retain agricultural land use. But just maybe massaging it a little bit would help, just eliminate that handcuffing that we might have.
Well, we're kind of weighing,
Yeah.
in our vision statement, we have preserving the agricultural character. We also have development that meets the needs of their citizens. So it's balancing those two. So I think some more flexibility, seeing that this is a 20-year window we're looking at is totally reasonable.
Well, and I think I envision like similar to what Commissioner Sackerson said on 8.4, and then I think for me what it is on like 8.3 is, today it's read as encouraging, if so desired, landowners to put their lands in Williamson Act if they want. But will that 15 years from now still be that same tone, or will it be used just, could it be used as a roadblock down the road of saying, well, no, the general plan says
I really feel like is a great cultural resource, and it was sort of meant offhandedly mentioned, but I'd really like to see that highlighted as an opportunity for, and it could even go in economic development too, as far as, or, youth services, all those kind of pieces. But I think about like the Octagon Barn in Slow is such a huge cultural piece, and you can see it from the freeway, so everyone knows it's there. But that 12-sided tabernacle is a huge history of our community, and it's a really cool building. And I think because it's tucked back in there behind Bank of America, not a lot of people know that it's there. Probably people in here do, but I'd really like to see that called out as a cultural element. And I know it's privately owned with the men's club now, but they've been doing some great renovation, and it's just a real jewel of our area, and I'd love to see it highlighted as a resource. Any other comments for this one?
And that's, you know, it is an interesting, Campo Rio Grande is an interesting type of thing that I think you've highlighted, that it kind of crosses a couple of different elements, because it's highlighted in the Parks and Rec element as a sort of place where city recreational opportunities could happen, programs and classes and things like that. But it also could be, as you said, a cultural piece to the city. Could potentially be another. It's just a very unique, I guess, resource.
Yeah, it's one of the oldest buildings in the city, and I took a tour there, so I'm sorry I'm on this hobby horse about it, but they were explaining that was like one of the only places to trade, and people came from all over to centralize there. So I just think as far as a cultural resource, that would be a great one to highlight. And what the men's club has been doing there, just for the general public, if you haven't been out there, they've been renovating all of the buildings and the tabernacle itself, and it is a really cool place. They do programs, but I feel like it's underutilized in our community, and I'd love to see it highlighted more. Anyone else on that one before we move on? Okay, let's move on to 4. Sorry, I gotta forward it with my laptop here. Does anyone have any chapter 4 comments? Sorry, I have to scooch. So that's the safety. Anyone on safety? Good night, folks. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate you.
I'm not sure whether it fits here. There's another place to put it, or it ends up being too detailed to be included. But one of the comments that we received this afternoon was talking about that, this high-speed internet. High-speed internet may not be directly safety related, certainly can be if, as far as emergency services and communications in time of an emergency of some kind. But I didn't see, and I would tend to agree, Grover Beach is unique because they are a site of an on-land destination for fiber cable between California and Asia that we don't have here. And I think that there probably some kind of relationship between the organizations that are doing that fiber facility and the city of Grover Beach. But recognizing that, this high-speed cable is there, if there's some way, that opportunity could be highlighted, whether it's here in safety or someplace else, as far as, utilities or upgrading or modernization or, dealing with, how we deal with these kind of, communication tools in the future. At least helping to identify that, I think, would be helpful. 40 years ago, there were telephones and, there were no such thing as cell phones. And at this point, people aren't wiring their houses for telephones anymore because 98% of us now have a cell phone and it's pretty wireless. Who knows what's going to be around in 20 years? But I'm going to assume high-speed fiber is in some manner. But I'd like to see, that question addressed and that comment addressed that we got this afternoon. Here again, whether it ends up in this section or there's another, element where it's more appropriate. But a comment of that, not a recognition that we as a city and, need to be aware of that, and at some point maybe spending money, from, city budgets in order to get that modernized, and having that highlighted, I think, as part of the master general plan. The general plan update would be appropriate.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments on safety? We can come back to it if you think.
again, these are guiding principles, and there's just a lot of information, which is all very good, but there's not, I mean, there's nothing for me in my mind to discuss about safety. It's just information. I don't know.
Yeah, that's fine. Noise? Noise?
Yeah, I'd like to highlight this as well. We did the other comment. I thought about this as I was going through this element over the weekend. There is very little, if anything, that's just related to community level noise rather than industrial or economic noise, as well as, traffic generated noise. I've had some very specific experiences with noise at my house and noise disruption. Acknowledging that whether it's music or there's other disruptive noise, if we're going to have noise as an important element in this, I think acknowledging some of these other sources of noise and disruptive noise would be appropriate, just to have something added in one of those into the element.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else. Parks and Rec. Any Parks, Rec, community service?
I'll jump in here.
Yeah, please.
One that was communicated in the Citizens Advisory Council was we had earlier on in the process didn't really realize that like annexation was potentially a topic of discussion in this whole general plan element, and there's kind of down on like the Oceano AG border, there's some ag lands that are pretty wide open, but they're not in the city, and it's not really our jurisdiction. It's more LAFCO that gets involved there. But encouraging, so I don't know if it would go as part of like 1.2, goal 1 through some of those or what, but encouraging maybe some park development or like the topic that kept coming up was like a big sports complex, multi-soccer fields. When you look at across the whole Central Coast, there's a need and desire for more fields. We have some at Soto, but they're not regulation for high school or like tournament style. And so there was discussion around it would be a super cool way to, if it's getting harder and harder to maintain ag lands profitably in town, could you take those fields and turn them into grass soccer fields or baseball fields or complexes where you could draw people from out of town and bring both parks to our community, but also revenue from outside sources. And I didn't really see a clear goal of how to build parks, I guess, in the development directive. So I don't know if I missed that or not, but that was something that was communicated and discussed at length with the Citizens Advisory Group. Is could be this cool way of kind of two birds with one stone, so to speak. You get parks, you maintain the open land, but you also now you draw people in from outside of town, helps hotels, helps restaurants, helps our economy as well.
That's a great idea. I love that idea. I think I was looking, just did a search for is annexation in here. Yeah. And it's in land use 2.6, annexation of key properties. It doesn't call out parks specifically and talks about LAFCO, but I think having more opportunities like that would be great. I love that idea.
Yeah, and I say that very off the cuff. I know the annexation process is a long one, and getting things within the sphere of influence is, a big conversation with LAFCO and the county and all those places. But it'd be something I think could be worthwhile to mention or point to in a in a 20 or 30 year doc. Could be worth looking at that in my mind.
Thank you. I had one comment and I don't know if it fits in Parks and Rec and Community Service or if it's more economic development, but one thing that I was looking kind of throughout the document and not seeing a lot of reflection on was the issue of childcare. And I'd really like to, it's called out, I think, in 2 different places, so it gets as much recognition as pickleball, so that's a good thing. But yes, but I think when we're looking at, I don't know if it fits better with like ED5, like support the local workforce, or if it fits more under Parks and Rec, because that's where it was before. And I know one of our biggest flashpoints in our community that we've had with City Council is when Parks and Rec closed their childcare program, which you know, those were some of our only low-income childcare spots in all of South County. So that I mean, Grover continues to run a program through their Parks and Rec, and I know the building is taken down now. But as we're looking at replacing that, I'd really like to look at where we can support our workforce with childcare opportunities, because if we don't have childcare, we're not going to be able to support a healthy workforce. And I mean, I'd really like to see it be provided the way it was before. And I was a little bit frustrated with kind of the explanation that, well, childcare doesn't pay for itself and it's $70,000 more than it brings in, so we're just going to end it. And it's like, well, we don't make streets pay for themselves. We don't make the police pay for themselves. We don't make anyone else pay for themselves. But when it's childcare, we make that pay for itself. And not to like go off on a tangent, because I know that's one little piece, but I feel like as a vibrant community, we need to make sure we have those opportunities. So whether that's partnering, whether the policy would be like partnering with other nonprofit organizations that can provide that, whether that's the Y or you know, any, whatever those opportunities are, I'd like to see it reflected as maybe not a goal, but as at least a policy as far as supporting our workforce. And so I don't know if it fits more in economic development or fits more in Parks and Rec.
Well, in Parks and Rec, I mean, we have, sorry, I was just scrolling away, 1.6, calling out senior activities, pursuing construction of facilities and coordination of programs to generate more activities for senior citizens. I mean, we could do something similar for childcare. Further down, we have community needs under recreation programs, 2.1. Provide a diverse range of recreation programs and services to respond to the changing needs of the community and social well-being for all ages. I mean, certainly if we can put language like that in, we can call out specifically childcare to help the Aurora Grande workforce. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that's a really good call out of something that is important for a very large segment of our population. I think it's worth putting in there somewhere. So I agree.
Thanks. Any other, and I guess, you know, maybe it was under Parks and Rec, but that's also community service, and I do feel like it's a community service.
Absolutely.
Any other comments on this, guy?
I'd like to make another comment under community services. And it's been, I'm going to say kind of a mini soapbox for me, is collaboration with our neighboring communities. When we talk about, I'm going to say kind of a regional, you know, athletic fields, whether it's soccer or football or baseball or whatever it may be, and even, you know, childcare services and some of these other services. Aurora Grande is a community of 18,000, doesn't have either the bare land or the financial resources to provide the full complement of things that are so desirable and beneficial to the greater community. And we talk about the 5 cities area, and if we can include, you know, the Oceano community and the Grover Beach community and the Pismo and the Pomo, I think a comment in here is probably appropriate, is encourage collaboration with the neighboring, you know, political entities to, you know, affect change or find solutions to problems that can be or should be solved outside of our own, you know, city borders, particularly in community services and recreational services. You know, Pismo Beach, I know, has a great, you know, Little League and baseball field complex. And, you know, we've got Soto, you know, Park and Soto Fields. So we don't have to have, you know, all football or all soccer or all pickleball right here in Aurora Grande, I think, in order to solve that. But a comment in here about that kind of collaboration with our neighboring communities to bring about, you know, better recreational and community services, to me, be probably an appropriate comment to include.
Would that maybe be something we could look at with 4.1? Does that address to some extent what you're saying? Would you like to elaborate that verbiage to address what you're saying? Or Just-
It does, I probably didn't get
Oh,
far
no,
enough down
it's
around.
339 pages, let's be clear, none of us know this by heart.
Absolutely. But that's,
um,
yeah, that's, maybe it's already included in that. And I think that 4.1 does do a lot of,
But I mean, I'm not questioning you, I'm actually just asking you, is there anything that you would like to elaborate on that? Because if we want it to be more encompassing, this is the time to direct staff.
right. I think that PRCS 4.1 there, it's now on the wall for the people in the audience to be able to look at that, look at the bottom of that particular sheet. That, I think, does address the intent of what I was trying to think, is that
Okay. If you continue on, they're actually pretty good, because they even talk about regional service coordination. So we're talking about if we're talking about these parks and recreation facilities, they bring in fire and safety to be considered with the adjoining neighbors as well. So this is.
yeah, and it's already happening on an active and has happened with the 5 Cities Fire
Exactly,
Authority that
yeah,
does exist
exactly,
as
with
a
EPA there.
collaborative effort. And I know that water and, clean water efforts and things kind of ebb and flow with the political reality of what's happening locally. But I know that there is ongoing collaboration, and this really confirms and memorializes this within that planning document. Thank you.
Okay, with that, should we look at circulation? Anyone? I did want to call out one of the written communications that we got about the egress. Is there a response for that as far as why that one neighborhood, oh shoot, what is it called again?
Trillium on
The
Grand.
Trillium on Grand. Yeah.
So there is an exception to that fire code provision. If all of the homes or dwelling units are equipped with fire sprinklers, then the 2 points of ingress and egress is not required. So although that development does have emergency egress, through a Knox box for the fire department, yeah, it technically doesn't meet the requirement, but it meets that exception.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. That helps. Are there any other comments on circulation here tonight?
I was just say I'm a fan of. It seems there's like a cohesive, because we move forward, connecting the east and west sides of the freeway is pretty cool. I like mainly where I saw it called out is on the bike paths and stuff. It's really connecting. If in the next 30 years a bike path along the creek could be built and connect kind of the village here with. I live on the west side of the freeway, and with small children biking across, whether it's North Fair Oaks by the fields or down Grand is not a fun or enjoyable experience with small children. And so being able to do that in a place that's much safer, I think would be very powerful for our community to kind of connect those two sides seamlessly. So I like this a lot. I know there's strong opinions about roundabouts and such, but by and large, I think with a very complex topic and a city sliced into, you guys have done a great job.
Thanks. Any other circulation comments? Seeing none, we'll go to the economic development. Any comments there?
I've got a few.
Go ahead, go ahead.
So let me get down here. Sorry to ED1. Sorry, my fingers are getting tired here. So the first one was just with expanded land use, and I think it's where I personally see just again flexibility of use space. I guess whether it's businesses wanting to start here. I know running small
is more of a residential bedroom community than many of the other cities in the county. And so there's really more of an outflux of residents that work outside the city than stay and work within the city. And so I think this balanced, the reality is it's tough to change that, but I think acknowledging that and perhaps in this balanced development, recognizing the value, and there are a lot of, I think there's a very strong sense of the residents in the community. They're very, very proud of this, that we're a local town and we've got a great, personality and attitude, and we're very, very protective of who we are and how we relate to each other as neighbors. But recognizing that additional hotels or Chick-fil-A's or getting the new Nordstrom in town or whatever it may be, balancing that kind of development is important from an economic standpoint and a fiscal standpoint, and has an impact, way beyond finding a grant to help pay for bridges and bike paths and things of that nature. So maybe that 2.6 might get fleshed out with another extra sentence or two. Here again, recognizing the value that we have as a residential, neighborhood, friendly community with the demands or the, future development over the next 20 years and the dictates of that economic development. We just need to be able to, let's keep our balance and keep looking at that.
Well, and I know there's there's room, right? I was on the T-bid board for a long time, and we looked at TOT numbers, and somewhere like Morro Bay, who's about half our population, and I know they're like directly on the beach, but they have 6 times the TOT tax revenue that we have. And so it's not that we need to become Morro Bay or we need to have, we're never going to have as many hotels as Pismo, but we currently have, I think it's 6 that pay into TOT tax plus, short-term rentals. And so I think that's where I'm not proposing that we write the language to where we become the next hotel hotspot, but a hotel here, a hotel there, I don't want to become some fast food stop on the freeway, but adding one here or one there might be a strategic revenue source for our community, because to maintain, I think, the bedroom community culture that we like, we've got to pay for roads, we've got to pay for some of these things. And so that might, I like your tie back to the balance. To me, that might be a balance of there's outside funding, but there's also revenue sources that we can control, and we can say, hey, we as a city do need revenue, and there's ways to do that in a balanced approach.
I agree with everything that you're saying. I think with our existing codes and an existing general plan, we do see occasionally, very, very infrequently, but occasionally projects like that come forth. We just had one within the last year that I know this commission was in support of. It was exactly that. It was a new hotel that they were just trying to get a conditional use situation happening. As far as this particular general plan, I wonder if some of the language in 84 might address what you're saying. If it's maybe too broad, maybe we can add additional language, either 4.2 or 4.3, where we're talking about proactive planning and zoning, and then retail opportunities or even industrial opportunities, like what you're saying, to bring in that revenue. Is that maybe an area that we think is appropriate to either elaborate on or revise?
I think those speak to at least as far as I see, I think those speak to the balanced nature of the development. I think for me, I think the hang up was in the fiscal health. We talk about, budgeting and spending, and then again, reviewing budgeting and fiscal management in terms of, an ongoing fiscal foundation. So it's like kind of implied at there, but I just personally, in terms of fiscal health, is like, I would love a more direct plan or strategy to revenue other than just grants or loan applications. So that's where in ED3 specifically, I feel like some call out of revenue, again, whether it's .3 or it's added to one or it's its own line. That's where in 3 specifically, it to me seems important to call out. Are we thinking about our revenue?
The way that you're explaining it, I really see it as a fiscal health, like a 3.4, where it's, I see what you're speaking to in 4 about opportunities. But But I do feel like, as you're explaining it, it really is a fiscal health
So
piece.
is this something that, do you need the commission to maybe draft up like a line of what you're kind of envisioning that you want it to say? And then we can, punt it to the general, I mean, I don't know.
I would trust the professionals to do that. I don't want to butcher it.
So you can just pay us to do it, right?
I think that's in the contract. No, if you guys need more specificity from me, I'm happy to give it, but to me, it's nothing
No, it's not crazy.
wildly detailed. It's just, I think, explicitly calling out, seeking out opportunities for new lines of revenue or new lines of income that aren't just grants and loans are a wonderful way to fund things in our community, especially, a lot of the community services and stuff. But I think the more that we can solidify our general fund, the better we'll be. I know last election cycle we had to raise taxes, and it was a heated debate in the community, and we still don't have funds to maintain that. SLOCOG came out with a pretty damning report of all of SLO County, and I think any way that we can be actively seeking balanced but new lines of revenue would be wise for our city to be doing so. I know the roads I live on will not last another 20 years, and so how do we pay for those, and how do we really maintain those while also being able to provide maybe more of the other services that we desire.
And not just infrastructure, but water. I mean, everything is going to need to be paid for. And I appreciate your point about generating that revenue to make sure we're fiscally healthy. I think that's really a good point. So,
I'm wondering under You can hear me fine. There we go. That's wasn't working a minute ago. Under the list under these numbers, we have the planning, retail, and industrial opportunities. I'm wondering if we probably ought to have one that just talks about visitor serving opportunities. That would certainly more specifically deal with hotels and things of that nature. But rather than bury that, I think just one or two sentences under an ED 4.5. Probably before industrial, but somewhere between planning and retail, or between retail and industrial, inserting one with visitor serving. Here again, I think we pride ourselves on being a great community of residents and pride that we live here and we enjoy the quality of life here. But visitor serving services and opportunities is really one way to just generate good income and additional income into the community from the outside. So I think perhaps including that would probably be an appropriate addition at this point. And I agree with Commissioner Worthen. We're getting an awful lot of good ideas and stuff in here, but for me it's kind of like, gee, perhaps this is a conversation between staff and the consultant and the next 45 days as people continue to look at this thing, that how does some of this get fleshed or modified in order to make it a more consistent or more appropriate final document.
thanks. Anything else on economic development, or should we go to our last chapter, the health and equity chapter? Any comments there?
Sorry, just right before you move on, I just want to say I really appreciated the EDA quality of life relationships, like that whole section, the implementation program. I appreciated the wording on all of it. Just it's a new program, but just so you guys know what I'm talking about, when the city is considering investments in public parks, gathering spaces, recreational facilities, and other quality of life features, reinforcing the relationship of the features to
Anything on health and equity? I don't see any. Okay. So I think we've gone through any overarching last comments before we move on from this item? Or what does, this is just a discussion, so we don't need any, we just close the item, okay.
I would just like to make a comment, and if it's possible, I'd like to open up for public comment again to just hear some reaction, if there's reaction or comments from people that are here, tonight. We have, I'm going to say, this 45-day window that's going to continue. So if people that are listening live to us tonight at home, or that you're here in the audience tonight, or those that listen to the recorded meeting, notes, and as they're coming back, this is a unique opportunity in the next 45 days to have an impact, get into the document, find that area that you're most interested in. I'm not expecting anybody to dive into the entire document because it is overwhelming, and we each have our own little biases and areas of interest. But here's a real opportunity. I know that I, as a planning commissioner, I know that city council members and staff and the contractor that's here, Michael and his staff, are sincerely interested in getting additional feedback. What we provided tonight, I know, has been helpful to them. The document is open to be tweaked. They're not going to recreate the whole thing, but there's certainly areas where if there's wording that is really not only inappropriate, but it's just unclear and needs either clarification or enhancement, now's the time to really do that. I can't encourage people strongly enough, because I'd hate to hear on day 46, I didn't have an opportunity, or I didn't know what was going on, or why didn't I get a chance, or why has this been kept a secret? The last thing that we want to do as a community is keep this as a secret. We want to encourage this kind of engagement. I'm not requiring or expecting anybody to step up tonight. Don't be afraid to go home and email staff with your comments or suggestions and whatever. We have this 45-day window to really take advantage of, and I'm sure you're going to reinforce that tomorrow night at the public workshop that's going to be presented. But now's the time, because they've done a great job. We're going to end up with a document. Now's the time to really get it tweaked and abridged.
And if you have gone to the website, or you're planning to go, or let friends and family know, it's really easy on the web.
As I sat down to read it today, not knowing the magnitude of the plan, I got to page 65 and don't know if my particular issue has been addressed, but I would like to see the bike lane between the village going down Grand Avenue made continuous, if that's at all possible, because it's kind of where it disappears, it gets a little scary. But I don't know if that's been addressed because I haven't gotten there yet. But that's my comment.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Any other comments? Thank you.
So, when talking about safety, the topic of networks came up by running fiber. I'm going to put two things out there. One, that is not our only opportunity. The California Middle Mile Network is supposed to come right through here. And then two, it might actually be a good opportunity in general. I mean, I know I certainly would pretty heavily consider an ISP run by the city over an ISP run by Spectrum. Putting that out there.
Thank you. Yes, please. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Judy Cicchetti. So I kind of want to make sure that your whole plan is from the city limits to the city limits, so it includes all the city, if that makes any sense. And also, I know that you said you'd like an easy way to reach. I know I'm not supposed to single you out, sorry. From the east to the west, Grand Avenue, and this gentleman also. I actually would like maybe a little bit better way of accessing from over here into town. I feel like there's no safe way to walk, and I know people walk, but it's not real safe from over there to this, especially like when the roads are closed for everything. And I also am not happy about the farming part. I know that there's so many restrictions and rules and regulations that discourages people. And then I also want to know, does the city have any secret property to build fields and so forth for the kids to utilize in the neighborhood, you know, that you guys have that you don't tell anybody about? Maybe that's a no. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Any other comments before we, oh, yes, please.
Hi, my name is Sean Pringle. I think it'd be helpful to get clarification. I won't be able to make the workshop tomorrow, but at some point, kind of understand more of the time frame for finalizing the general plan. You mentioned the EIR won't come out until fall of 2026. So just to know for the public, from public standpoint, how soon the general plan will be finalized, and then how soon Planning Commission and City Council can actually act upon the recommendations of the general plan, specifically the new policies that are going to be presented to them. The other item I was going to bring up in regards to circulation elements, one concern I do still have in regards to the Fair Oaks exit, US 101 southbound getting on a Fair Oaks. I know it has a temporary stoplight right now. Prior to that, it had a stop sign, but I still think that there's some traffic concern there, both during the day and in the evening. So having that perhaps looked at in regards to the circulation element. Thank you. Thanks for all of your feedback tonight too. It was helpful to see how you reflected on the general plan and allowing us to come back up and give our feedback. So thank you for
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
Appreciate
Good
it.
idea, Commissioner Martin. Thank you. Thank you, sir. And then before we close up, anybody online, since we're reopening?
If anybody on Zoom would like to comment regarding this item, please raise your hand at this time. We have no raised hands.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and re-close public comment if that's how that works. And then before we move off of the topic, can we just see the timeline one more time just to kind of go over? I know in February 2026, that's when the city council will be receiving all of this. And then what is the next step? Just then the EIR after that.
Yeah, so what we can kind of expect now, so this is our first rollout of the public review draft. This is just the preliminary one. We have another round of review after the environmental impact report is published. So this is, yes, we have a 45-day window now, but then we'll have another 45-day window again when we actually go to the adoption of it. So what you can expect from us is through February, we'll be collecting public comment. We'll report that back to City Council. Then we'll initiate the environmental impact report. That will take around 8 to 10 months. During that time, we'll be working on your development code in the background. I would forecast that reasonably we would be looking at an adoption in the end of 2026, early 2027 timeframe. Just going to be realistic, just given holidays and timing. But that's where and as far as implementation, as soon as it's adopted, given there's no impeding litigation and your timeframes, it gets approved and everything goes through well, then I believe it would be 30 days after the adoption is when it would be valid and implementable.
Thank you. That's really helpful. It's been a long process, so this is a really exciting night to see it really come together in its current form. Any other comments before we move off?
Yeah, just for the people in the room and then also for just the general public, I know that there are some of the elements that we kind of just glossed over, like we didn't necessarily have questions that we wanted to bring up tonight. But I also know that you all may not have had the time to go through all 339 pages. So something that was helpful for me, and I think might be helpful for you, is if you open up this giant document, one of the things you can do is go to each section and look at the policies and goals. And under each, 2.1, 1.5, each section, it'll tell you if it's a new policy or existing modified. I found it was really helpful to be like, okay, well, I kind of understand where we are as a city right now. So if I really focus on anything that says new policy, it's just a good starting point. So I don't know if that's helpful for you, but for me, when I have to digest something like this, it's a good place to start. And then you can start building your questions from there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Any other comments before we move off this item? Okay, so we
just
will,
wanted to-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
A couple things of clarification. Just a couple of comments that came out, just want to address them. We don't have any secret city properties, but not many people probably know all of the properties that the city owns, but we would be happy if anybody wanted to come into City Hall, and which City Hall is owned by the city. If anyone wants to come in, we can go through, and I don't believe we publish an entire list of those. But second thing is what you, for the audience at least, what you didn't see tonight, and maybe you're wondering why haven't we really talked about housing? There's a separate housing element that's not part of this comprehensive plan that goes on a different cycle because it's some very strict state regulations about the timing of that. So you'll see next year, this year and going into next year, we will be updating the housing element, which is a very important element, but is not part of this comprehensive element plan.
Thanks for clarifying that. That's really, really important because I had some things that I know we've talked about as a planning commission and city councils also talked about that are housing related, but we'll get to that. Right, okay.
And Chair
Okay,
Roof?
Oh, sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
And I'll address some of the comments about the bike lanes. So there are policies in the circulation element that encourage the city to implement the active transportation plan, which was adopted by city council this year. And so many of the, the questions we heard tonight and comments, there are plans to make those improvements, and they're all contained in that active transportation plan, which can be found on the city's website.
Thank you. So we will close.
Excuse me, one real quick. And look at page 250. When you get to 250 in the document, in the next month or so, as you're looking at it, that has a lot more information. And the page is just before, and now I'm just scanning through it. But it talks about bikes and bike lanes and bike paths and things of that nature. So it is addressed at some level, but appropriate for you to look at more in detail.
Okay. All right, we'll close item 9. Thank you, everyone in the room, and thank you to our consultant and staff for all the hard work. We really, really appreciate it. Then we'll move on to 10, which is notice of administrative items since November 4th, 2025, and there are none. So I will move to 11, commission communications. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any communication?
Just one last time, thank you for seeing the number of people that we saw tonight. The last meeting, we had 0 people from the public at the meeting. And from time to time, particularly when we have something as big and as significant as this, at least there are some people in the community that are interested in seeing what we're doing and engaged even passively in this process. So thank you for showing up. And I can't encourage the greater community enough to look at aspects of this document and to make comments and come attend tomorrow night if you can. And if not, you certainly reach out to staff for clarification on comments you may have. Thank you.
Can we do public comment on 11? Sure. Okay, come on up. Okay.
Again, I want to say something that I think is really important with bikes. I own an e-bike, and I saw the news release from the city about the lithium battery problem with the rad power bikes. I don't own a rad bike, but I thought it was kind of cool that you guys kind of got ahead of this because there are a lot of e-bikes. And if these lithium batteries are bad and burning up and blah, 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 that's not good. But you gave a list of where you can take your bike battery, dispose of it. I just thought that was pretty cool. I don't know whose idea it was to send out a general message like that regarding lithium batteries on e-bikes, but that's a big deal. And if you dig into it a little bit and you see some of the house fires that went up, buildings that have gone on fire from lithium batteries. I mean, so again, accolades again to you guys. Whoever did that, communication-wise, thumbs up, because that's important stuff, especially for us bikers.
Thank you. And thank you, staff, for that. I actually didn't see that one, so thank you for calling it to my attention. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Sorry, just lost my place. Yeah, Commissioner Worthen or Sackerson, any
Just another
communications?
thank you. Like, again, we can't stress this enough, how big of an undertaking this is for city staff and to work with the consultants and the entire consultant team. Like, thank you for showing up and being here to answer our questions and kind of guide us through it, because it's our first time going through a general plan update. And it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot to incorporate everybody's opinions in the best possible way without stifling any one thing. So just, I appreciate the effort being put forth by everyone.
Thank you. So we will close item 11 and move to 12, staff communications. Do you have any communications for us?
No additional communications tonight.
Okay, are you sure? Go in
Actually,
once.
I just wanted to announce that the city's community service grant program application period, it's been open since October 24th, but applications would be due by end of day on Thursday, December 4th. And so this is a program that provides grants to nonprofit organizations in the community that provide a direct benefit to AG residents. So if you're interested, please find it on the website or feel free to contact me.
I'm just going to say, as someone who's sat on that committee for the last 2 or 3 years, it's a really good one. If you want to get involved in the city, this is a really hands-on thing that you can do that takes very little time commitment. I mean, you get to review applications from amazing nonprofits that serve our community directly, asking to help continue their services, and you get a direct hand in granting them the ability to do so a lot of times. It's very low commitment time. If you have any questions, I know I am happy to answer anything and talk to anybody that wants to do it. Please encourage anybody to apply.
That was my question, is do you have a full committee? Or I know there were a few of us that rotated off and there were some open seats.
We do have one vacancy at the moment. So applications could be turned into the clerk's office.
And does someone have to be appointed, or you just turn in an application?
Yeah, if someone's interested, they would turn in the application and city council would consider their application for appointment.
Okay. How many do you have a lot of grants to look at? I'm just curious.
I don't know the number I have right now, but I know last year we considered more than 20.
Oh,
And there's
wow.
75,000 available, and I think more than $150,000 were requested. So our grant committee had a hard job. Yeah.
Tough job. Thank you. Thanks so much. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:05 p.m. Thank you, everybody. Good night.